Shekhenim, Chapter 13. When a person gives landed property as a gift, the rights of the neighbor do not apply. When the deed recording a gift states the giver accepts financial responsibility for this gift, the rights of the neighbor do apply. Since the deed mentions financial responsibility, it is obvious that the transfer was a sale. It used the term gift only to nullify the rights of the neighbor. How much should the neighbor pay? The value of the property too. In the above situation, if the purchaser admits the ruse, saying, yes, we tried to perpetrate deception, it was a sale, and this is the price I paid for it, he must support his claim by taking an oath while holding a sacred article. He may then collect his claim as the law concerning agents. It appears to me the purchaser must claim only a price that is appropriate for the property or slightly more. If whoever claims to have paid 200 zuz for a property worth 100, his word is not accepted. 3. If the deed recording a gift states, I accept financial responsibility for this gift, if it is expropriated from the recipient, I will give him 200 zuz. The neighbor must pay the recipient 200 zuz. Only afterwards he may displace him. This applies even if the property is worth only a mana. 4. When a person exchanges a courtyard for another courtyard, a neighbor is not given the right to displace one of the recipients. When a person exchanges a courtyard for an animal or for movable property, we evaluate the worth of that animal or movable property. The neighbor then gives this amount to the purchaser and displaces him. The purchaser cannot tell the neighbor, give me an article like the one I used for the purchase, for this is a ruse and is not reckoned with at all. 5. The following rules apply when a person sells a colleague a small portion of land in the midst of his field and then sells him a larger portion of land next to that field. We evaluate the property with the smaller portion that he sold him for the first is greater or lesser value than the portion of the land he sold him afterwards. The purchaser acquires the desired land. The neighbor cannot displace him for the purchaser himself. As neighbor, by virtue of the small amount of land he purchased in the center. If the small portion of the land in the center is the same value as the portion on the side, this is an act of deception. The neighbor is entitled to displace the purchaser from the second portion of the field that he bought. 6. When a person sells a property within the context of a conditional agreement, whether the condition was stipulated by the seller or the purchaser, a neighbor cannot displace the purchaser until all the conditions are met and the purchaser acquires the property entirely without the original owner retaining any connection to it. Only then may the neighbor displace him. 7. When the purchaser has built to improve the property he purchased or destroyed or impaired him, and the neighbor displaces him, he must pay him the money that is appropriated for him. In all his deeds, he is considered by the agent of the neighbor. Similarly, if the purchaser took a loan before the neighbor displaced him and the neighbor displaced afterwards, his creditor may not expropriate the property from the neighbor. The following principle governs all these laws. Whenever a person purchases property bordering on a colleague's property line, he is considered that person's agent, and as if he were sent only to better his interest and not to impair them. Thus, if he improves the property, he receives only his expenses. If he impairs the value of the property by digging, destroying, or partaking of its produce, we reduce the money paid to him. When do we take into account the produce in which he partook? When he partook of this produce after the neighbor came and bought money to displace him, this does not apply with regard to the produce of which he partook before the time. On the contrary, he is considered to have partaken of his own produce, and none of it is taken into account. 8. When a person purchases land from two owners, purchases a field from two owners, and the neighbor comes and desires to displace him only from the portion of the property that he purchased from one, he is not given that right. He must either displace him from the entire property or leave him with the entire property. When, by contrast, a person sells a property to two people, the neighbor has the right to displace them both or displace one and leave the other. Now, when the neighbor comes to displace the purchaser before he displaces him, he sells him the field he owns that borders on the property, he forfeits his right. 10. When agent conducts the sale of property and he himself is a neighbor, he does not have a right to displace the purchaser since he himself sold him the property. There is no greater waiver possible. 11. When a creditor of the sale expropriates the field from the neighbor should collect his due from the purchaser whom he displaced. The purchaser in turn should collect his due from the seller. 12. Whenever a creditor expropriates property as a payment for an outstanding debt, the neighbor has the right to displace him. For a person expropriating property should not have a greater right than one who purchases. If at any later date the original owner desires to pay back the money that he owed, the ownership of this field will revert to him. He always has this right, as will be explained in the appropriate place. 13. When a minor as a neighbor, the court sees that it is his benefit, it displaces the purchaser on his behalf and enables him to share in the division of the property among the other neighbors as it sees fit. 14. When a man's wife owns property that borders on a property that is being sold, the husband has the right to displace the purchaser for all his wife's properties in his domain, for he has the right to exercise every privilege that would be hers, even if the woman performing a kinyan affirming that she waives this right on behalf of the purchaser, her act is of no consequence, and her husband may displace him. The following was applied if the wife took the initiative and displaced the purchaser, or a servant who carried on business on behalf of his master displaced the purchaser. If the husband of the master acquiesces to this displacement, he confirms their deeds. If he desires, he may not confirm their deeds, and the wife or the servant must return the property. Chapter 14. The following rules apply when a person desires to sell a field and brings his neighbor and the prospective purchaser to court. If he tells the neighbor, if you desire to buy the field at this and this price, do so. If not, withdraw. Here is the purchaser. The neighbor has no room to protest. He must either bring money immediately and purchase the field or waive his privilege. If the neighbor says, I will work to raise money, he is not hid. If he says, I will go and bring money, and one presume that he possesses the resources at hand, we wait until he goes and brings the funds. If one would not presume that he possesses the resources, we do not heed him, for we assume that he is merely seeking to delay. Therefore, we tell him, either produce the funds immediately or waive your privilege. The rationale is that the neighbor is not given time to amass funds. The following will applies when both the neighbor and the prospective purchaser produce money, and the coins produced by the purchaser are better and more likely to be accepted than those produced by the neighbor. The neighbor is not given a privilege; the property may be sold without his being given the right to displace the purchaser. If the prospective purchaser desires to buy the property and to build houses, the neighbor desires to purchase it as a field. The purchaser is granted it because of the virtue of settling the land. The neighbor is not granted this privilege of displacing him. 2. If a purchaser comes and consults with the neighbor asking him, so-and-so, your neighbor desires to sell me his field, should I purchase it? The neighbor does not forfeit his right, even if he tells him go and purchase it. Instead, he may displace him after he purchases it, unless he performs a confirming that he does not desire the property. When it is necessary for the neighbor to confirm that he has no claim against the purchaser with a Kenyan, when he makes such statements before he purchases the property. If, however, he waives his right after he purchases the property, for instance, the neighbor comes and helps the purchaser, rents a piece of the property from him, or sees that he is building or destroying even the smallest portion of the property and using it as his own, the neighbor does not protest or assert a claim. He is considered to have waived his right, and he is not given another opportunity to displace him. 3. When the neighbor was in another country sick or below the age of majority, and afterwards he recuperated, came of age, and returned from the journey, he does not have the right to displace the purchaser. If he was given such a right, the person would never be able to sell land or property. The purchaser would fear it would be taken from me at a later date. The Gehenim have ruled in this matter. 4. The following rules apply when a person sells property that is worth 200 zuz for a mana. If the seller would discount this price for everyone, the neighbor is required to pay only the purchaser only 100 zuz before he displaces him. If the seller would not discount the price for everyone, the neighbor must pay the purchaser 200 zuz that the property is worth, for it is as if the seller gave the purchaser a gift. This is probably negaya when you're returning things on sale. Anyways, fine. If a person purchased property worth a mana for 200 zuz, a neighbor cannot displace him unless he gives him 200 zuz. If the neighbor protests, they are perpetrating an act of deception together. The purchaser must take an oath while holding a sacred article. Afterwards, he may collect 200 zuz. If there were witnesses, the purchaser gave 200 zuz, but the neighbor claims there's an agreement between him and the seller, and that he definitely knows that in truth the seller took only 100 zuz from him. The neighbor must pay the amount of money the witness stated. Afterwards, he may displace the purchaser and require him to take a test that he purchased for the property for 200 zuz. After taking that oath, he is under no further obligations. 5. The following is whenever a person wants to sell land or property, and 2 people come offering to purchase it, and each one is willing to pay the same price, and neither of them is a neighbor. If one of the prospective purchasers was an inhabitant of the city and the other were dwelling in the outlying fields, the inhabitant of the city is given priority. If one of them was close to the property being sold and the other was a Torah scholar, the Torah scholar is given priority. Similarly, if one is a relative and the other is a Torah scholar, the Torah scholar is given priority. If one is a relative and the other lives close to the property, the one who lives close to the property is given priority, for this is also an act of good and justice. In any of the above situations, if the other person acted first and acquired the property, his colleague does not have the right to a displacement, for neither of them owns the property bordering on the property being sold, and our citizens establish these rules only as an expression of piety and a generous spirit. Blessed is he who grants assistance to the sign. שלוחין ושותפין, Chapter 1, Introduction to שלוחין ושותפין. The purpose of these laws is to know the rules pertaining to persons, agents, and his partners, and the injunctions that apply with regard to the purchases, sales, losses, and profits. These myths are explained in the chapters that follow. 1. When a person tells a colleague, go out and sell landed property for me, movable property, or purchase for me, and the person should perform his agency, selling or buying. All his deeds are binding. It is not necessary for a person who appoints an agent to perform a kinyan or have the appointment observed by witnesses. Instead, the statement he makes to his colleague is sufficient. Witnesses are necessary only solely to reveal what transpired if one of the two denies the matter, as is the case with regard to other claims. 2. When an agent intentionally violates the instructions of his principal, his deeds are of no consequence. Similarly, if he erred even with regard to the slightest amount, the transaction, whether involving land, property, or movable property, is nullified. The principal can claim, I sent you to improve my position, not to impair it. The principle is that with regard to movable property, the laws of Inna do not apply unless one piece is 6 or more than the proper price for an article, and that these laws do not apply at all with regard to the sale of servants, promissory notes, and landed property. They do, however, apply when the seller or the purchaser himself conducts the transaction. When, however, it is conducted by an agent, and the error in his valuation with regard to even the slightest amount, the transaction is nullified. 3. When a person gives money to an agent to purchase landed property, and their agent purchases it for him without requiring the seller to accept financial responsibility, if it is expropriated from the purchaser, he is considered to have damaged the principal's position. The agent must purchase the property without financial responsibility, as he did for himself. Then he must sell it to the principal and accept financial responsibility. This decision is rendered because the agent purchased the property with money belonging to the principal. The agent must accept financial responsibility himself, so must apply in all analogous situations. Therefore, the principal explicitly stipulated that he is appointing the agent in that capacity, whether he improves the situation or impairs it. He may not retract. Even if the agent sold a field with 100 dinar for a dinar for a purchase, one worth a dinar for 100, the principal must pay the agent as he originally stipulated. 4. When a person tells his agent, sell a portion of my field large enough to sow a saw, and he sells a portion large enough to sow 2 saw, the agent is considered to have added the principal's instructions. The purchaser requires only near large enough to sow 1 saw. If the principal told the agent, sell a portion large enough to sow 2 saw, and the agent only sold near large enough to sow 1 saw, the agent is considered to have violated the principal's instructions. The purchaser does not acquire anything. If the principal told the agent, sell my field to one person for me, and the agent told the two people the sale is nullified for you violate the principal's instructions. The principal told the agent to sell the field for me without giving it further instructions. The sale was made with the agents are binding even if he sold the property in 100 portions. 5. When a person gives money to his agent to purchase wheat or any other merchandise and the agent does not make up the purchase, the principal does not have a financial claim against the agent, only complaints. Following was applied, if principal gives an agent money to purchase wheat together, whether to eat or to use as merchandise, and the agent purchases barley. If the price of barley that he purchased becomes less than the price of wheat, the agent must bear the loss because he deviated from the instructions he was given. If the price of barley increases more than the price of wheat, however, it belongs to the owner of the money. If the price of merchandise was fixed and an additional quantity or weight or measure was given, the agent, whatever was added by the seller, should be divided between the two, i.e., the additional measure should be split between the agent and the principal. If the object sold is not at a fixed price, everything should be given to the principal. 6. The following is applied when a person owes his colleague money, whether because of a debt, an entrusted article, or a wage, and he gave the money to an agent and told him, bring this money to my creditor. The agent is not required to take special care of the matter and pay the creditor in the presence of witnesses. The principal told the agent, do not pay the debt unless witnesses observe it, and he paid the debt in the absence of witnesses. The agent is liable should the creditor demand payment of the debt again. Similarly, if the debt was recorded in a promissory note and the agent paid the debt outside the presence of witnesses and did not take the promissory note, the agent is liable should the creditor demand payment of the money again. This applies whether the debtor told the agent to take the promissory note and give him the money, or give him the money and take the promissory note for it. By not taking the note, the agent impaired the principal's position and did not approve it. Keep your receipts covered. 7. The following rules apply when a person sends money that he possesses to an agent saying, bring this money to so-and-so because I owe it to him. But the agent went and gave the creditor the money outside the presence of witnesses. If the agent said I paid and the creditor said, or the worker said I did not receive it, 3 stand together, the following course of action should be taken. The agent says that he paid the debt. The creditor of the worker should take an oath that he did not receive anything. The principal should pay the creditor or the owner of the entrusted object, even if there were 2 agents entrusted with making the payment. Their testimonies have no consequence because they are involved parties, for they require the actual process. When the apply when the agent denies the statement of the creditor and the 3 are standing together with the agent comes to the principal and tells him, I paid your creditor as you instructed me. The principal may not require him to take an oath that he performed the mission, for there is no one who issues a definite claim that he did not perform his mission. Similarly, if the agent died of travel that was seasoned, the creditor came to demand a payment of the debt. Debtor may not require him to take it as the agent did not pay him, for there was no one who issues a definite claim that he received the money. Instead, the debtor should have a ban of ostracism issued against anyone who demands payment a second time. Afterwards, he must pay the debt he owes. Similar principles apply in all analogous situations. 8. Following was applied when Reuben sends a letter to Shimon telling him, you owe me a money. Send it to me with Levi. If Shimon is willing to send the money with him, he is no longer responsible for it. This applies whether a loan or a trusted object is involved, provided you recognize the letter was written in Reuben's handwriting. If the creditor claims he did not write the note or send it to you, the debtor must take a short test that he has received the note and therefore send the money. He is not under any further obligation. This is the manner in which my teachers rule. Different rules apply, however, if the note was not written in the principal's handwriting, or the debtor did not know that it was written in his handwriting, even if it contained signs and letters that only they knew about. If Reuben claims that the not sent letter other people tricked you, Shimon is responsible for the funds and must pay Reuben if the funds do not reach him after he issues a ban of ostracism against anyone who intentionally sent a letter and denies it. There are those who rule that Reuben must take an oath before collecting the money, as is required of others who take an oath before collecting their due. 9. The following was applied when Levi comes as an agent of Reuben and takes 50 silver from Shimon, and then Reuben comes and claims that I sent him to take only 20, and all that he brought me was 20. Reuben must take an oath supporting his claim, as is required of anyone who admits a portion of the claim made against him. And Levi must take a oath. It says that he gave Reuben the 50 silvers that were given to him. If the above scenario was repeated in an instance where Shimon owed money to Reuben must pay the difference from his own resources. Similar laws apply in all analogous situations.